Duru and the Super Monsters' Great Adventure. Once upon a time in the magical land of Super Monsters World, there lived a 2-year-old girl named Duru. Duru was unlike any other girl her age because she was a super monster. Being a super monster meant that Duru had extraordinary powers, just like her friends Cleo Graves, Drac Shadows, Frankie Mash, Lobo Howler, Zoe Walker, Spike Gong, Vita Calavera, Olive, Rocky, Sammy Snow, and Zane Walker. Together, they attended Pitchfork Pines Preschool, where they learned how to use their powers and become even greater super monsters. One beautiful, sunny day, Duru and her friends were playing outside when they noticed something strange was happening in Super Monsters World. The trees were losing their leaves, the flowers were wilting, and the grass was turning brown. The once vibrant land was turning dull and lifeless. Duru and her friends knew that something was wrong, and they decided to investigate. They gathered in their classroom to discuss the strange events with their teacher, Ms. Katya Spelling. As they talked, they realized that they needed to use their powers to save their beloved world. Duru, with her ability to control plants, was the first to take action. With a wave of her hands, she tried to make the trees regain their leaves, the flowers bloom, and the grass become green again. But no matter how hard she tried, Duru couldn't reverse the damage that had been done. Cleo Graves, who had a connection with the moon and could control gravity, tried to use her powers to help Duru. She hoped that by changing the gravitational pull of the moon, it would help the plants grow. But despite her efforts, the plants remained lifeless. Drac Shadows, who had the ability to fly and communicate with animals, decided to try and help as well. He flew through the sky, asking the birds and other creatures if they knew what was causing the plants to die. Unfortunately, none of them had any answers. Frankie Mash, who had super strength and the ability to control electricity, thought that maybe the plants needed more energy to grow. He tried to give them a boost with his electrical powers, but it didn't work. Lobo Howler, who could control the weather and howl at the moon, attempted to create the perfect weather conditions for the plants to thrive. He made it rain, hoping the water would bring the plants back to life. But even after a downpour, the plants remained wilted and lifeless. Zoe Walker, who could control time, tried to go back in time to prevent whatever was causing the plants to die. However, she couldn't pinpoint when or what caused the problem, so she couldn't change the course of events. Spike Gong, who had the ability to create music and sound waves, thought that perhaps the plants needed some soothing music to help them grow. He played his gong and created beautiful melodies, but it didn't bring the plants back to life. Vita Calavera, who could communicate with the dead and had control over fire, tried to use her powers to warm the plants and bring life back to them. But even the warmth of her fire couldn't revive the dying plants. Olive, who could control the elements of earth, air, fire, and water, decided to try and combine her powers to help. She created a mixture of all the elements, hoping it would bring life back to the plants. But as hard as Olive tried, the plants remained dead. Rocky, who had the ability to control rocks and minerals, thought that maybe the plants needed more minerals to grow. He gathered rocks and minerals from around Super Monsters World and sprinkled them around the plants, but it didn't help. Sammy Snow, who could create and control snow and ice, tried to create a cool and refreshing environment for the plants to thrive. She covered the ground with a thin layer of snow and ice, but it didn't revive the plants. Zane Walker, who could control shadows and darkness, thought that perhaps the plants needed more shade to protect them from the harsh sun. He created a canopy of shadows over the plants, but it didn't bring them back to life. Feeling defeated and worried about the fate of their world, Duru and her friends returned to their classroom to ask Ms. Katya Spelling for advice. As they explained their failed attempts to save the plants, Ms. Spelling listened closely and then smiled gently. "My dear super monsters," she said, "you have all tried so hard and used your powers in such creative ways to help our world. But sometimes, the solution to a problem isn't about using our individual powers. It's about working together as a team." Duru and her friends looked at each other, realizing that Ms. Spelling was right. They hadn't tried working together to solve the problem. With newfound determination, they decided to combine their powers and work as a team to save Super Monsters World. Duru used her power to control plants, Cleo used her gravitational powers, Drac communicated with the animals, Frankie used his electrical powers, Lobo controlled the weather, Zoe controlled time, Spike played his music, Vita used her fire powers, Olive combined the elements, Rocky provided minerals, Sammy created a cool environment, and Zane provided shade. As they worked together, something magical began to happen. Slowly, the trees started to regain their leaves, the flowers began to bloom, and the grass turned green again. The once dying world was coming back to life, all thanks to Duru and her friends working together as a team. As they celebrated their success, Duru and her friends realized the important lesson they had learned: their powers were incredible, but when they worked together as a team, they could accomplish even greater things. From that day on, Duru and her fellow super monsters continued to learn, grow, and use their powers for good. They knew that no matter what challenges they faced, they would always be stronger when they worked together as a team. And so, Super Monsters World remained a beautiful, magical place, full of adventure and friendship. Duru and her friends continued to have many more exciting adventures, and they lived happily ever after. The end.